Hi everyone, welcome when you make the call. I'm Dick Jarvis with my co-host Barry Sinewitz. Thanks for joining us tonight. Great night, beautiful night out there.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to continue our discussion that we've had in the last few weeks about, it will go into the quality of representation some of our councilors are not giving us. And that's not every council, but some of them could be doing a better job in our opinion. It'll waft into that. But also dealing with one of the big issues that this show's been focusing on lately is the way the city's being developed. And it seems to be, in our opinion, that the city's direction and development is contrary to what many people who live in neighborhoods actually don't want, and that's density and more traffic and more multi units in their neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods where they're not used to it. And so we've been focusing on that because it is a concern of theirs and we hear about it all the time. So having said that, we got our number up here. If you want to call during the show at any time, I just ask if you hold for a minute. I went to night school, so this may take me 4 or 5 minutes to read. But anyway, the number here at the studio is 978-977-0570. And we'd like to hear what you have to say. What I like to do is start the show tonight reading a letter that was I think it was pretty well written, and I think it sums up a lot of people's feelings across the city about how they feel about their neighborhoods and how they want to protect them and all that. And I think it also, on the other side of the coin, the flip side of that coin, is it shows that our city is not really keeping people in this city advised, informed about what's going on, and trying to pull the wool over their eyes, type of thing. So, so I'm going to start with this letter to the editor, and I believe was this the Lynn item one?
I think it was in the item in the Peabody Weekly.
Okay, the Peabody Weekly in the item. Okay, because I don't see where it's a reference. But anyway, it entitled "Upset Over the J.B. Thomas Process." J.B. Thomas being the old J.B. Thomas hospital property up in King Street there in Ward 4. And so we're going to say, we're going to start it off. I'm not going to give the person's name. She lives in Raymond Circle, which is off of Forest Street, but no need to give her a name. But let me read it to you. As a lifelong resident of Peabody, I'm astounded and outraged by the secrecy and backroom shenanigans, I love that word, shenanigans, that's a great word, behind the proposal to develop a colossal complex in our beautiful neighborhood at the site of the old J.B. Thomas Hospital. First, there was an effort to change the zoning where the neighbors were not informed. So in other words, that's the backroom deal, I guess she was referring to. The January public notice of this attempt made no mention of the area being changed, that's the zoning being changed, and could have been anywhere in the city and no one would be the wiser. When we, the neighbors, caught wind of this at the last minute, we gathered as many residents as we could and stormed this charade. Upon arrival, Mayor Betancourt corralled us in his office and told us the matter would be tabled. This was an effort to quell any public dissension. We were packed like sardines in the mayor's office, voicing our displeasure with both the project and the lack of transparency. Because the zoning change sleight of hand failed, a new tool had been pulled from their bag of tricks to get this project approved, the filing of a special permit the last week of June. At the July 11th City Council meeting, it was clear that Councilor Manning Martin had concerns over the timing of the filing of the new special permit for this massive project, coinciding with the City Council's summer recess. When she attempted to speak on the matter, the City Council President, Ward 1 Councilor John Turco, blatantly tried to ignore her request to be heard before the council and then tried to stifle her. When the Veteran Council pressed on, she clearly articulated her concerns and asked the Ward 4 Councilor to ask the petitioner for a mutually agreed extension that would allow her and her colleagues to be more prepared while being inclusive of the neighborhood. In other words, she wanted this thing extended so that everybody in the council would get a clearer picture of it, plus also the neighbors. So obviously the neighbors were not being included in anything that was going on. Not only was the Ward 4 councilor indignant at her request, he indicated he felt blindsided by his colleague's request. Can you imagine that? Him feeling blindsided? The city has kept the neighbors in the dark this entire time. In dismissing Councilor Manning Martin's request, Councilor Charis deferred to the schedule and needs of the developer, a company from China, over the over the concerns of the residents he represents. This type of chicanery by elected officials is damaging to our city, our democracy, and our rights to protect our property and quality of life. We will be there on August 22nd when this public hearing has been scheduled to be heard. And I suggest to those of you who are not directly affected by this development, there is one coming in your neighborhood soon. You just don't know it yet. And it's signed by, and this was in the paper, she's given her name and everything, but it was actually it fit in with some of the things that we were talking about on the show in the last few months. And again, it sums up a lot of things that we talked about: lack of transparency, lack of transparency in the sense that neighbors weren't updated on what was going on, and the idea of trying to slip a zoning change, Barry, from R2 to R4 without informing the neighbors is really outrageous. And it's not a slight zoning change. R2 is you can have 1 and 2 family homes, correct?
Correct.
And R4 is you have multi-dwelling homes, right? And even some commercial property.
4-family
commercials, right?
Convenience stores are allowed by right. So
that's a big difference between 1 and 2 families. So, and the thing about transparency comes up again in this letter, and we were suggesting on this show to all of our viewers, and we hear a lot, both Barry and I hear a lot, believe me, people tell us a lot of things. And if the city councilors and the politicos in the city think everything is hunky-dory and everybody likes what they're doing, I don't want to be the messenger, the bad news messenger, but that's not true. And this letter is an indication of, I'm surprised it's the first one we've seen in a long time. But I don't think it's going to be the last one, to be quite honest with you. And people in this city are really concerned about the lack of transparency and how our city government's operating, and some of the things that are going on, the failure to keep people informed of what's going on, the failure to even listen to what people want, because they're hearing it all the time. Now, these councils are hearing it all the time. They're telling people are telling them what they don't want, and they still go about voting on their own. I don't know if it's personal agendas or what, but they certainly don't take to heart the interests of people in the neighborhoods. And that's a pretty serious situation when people we elect them to represent us. They don't listen to us, and they do what they damn well please, quite honestly. And so this is why we bring it up. This is why we started the show off with this, to kind of substantiate some of the things that Barry and I have been talking about for a while that are quite frankly true. And some of these councilors should be ashamed of themselves. We have councilors who are getting involved in real estate stuff, whether on the Betancourt building, for instance, councilor, violated the rights of one of the owners there, and a developer, and he sued the city. And what did it cost us now?
At the end, $1.25 million.
Yeah, over $1 million, because the council stuck his nose in where he shouldn't have. And we got councils sticking their nose, and they don't want something in their community, so now we're still in litigation with Verizon because of it, about the cell tower, because we got a former councilor, not a councilor here, a former councilor doing something that he shouldn't do. Okay. And this is what I mean. We don't have the right people in the right places anymore. I hate to say that, and I'm not really a fan of this administration, the way they're running the city, quite honestly. Part of it is because I don't think they put the right people in the right places. And it's costing all of us a lot of money, a lot of aggravation, and, so anyway. Any comments on this?
Well, first of all, this is a pretty powerful letter.
Yep.
And it's very well written. Everything, in my opinion, that this person has said is pretty much true. The only thing I can't corroborate, I wasn't involved, I wasn't in the office when all the people, I wasn't at the meeting, but I wasn't invited in to witness what happened in that office, so I don't know the tone of that.
Yep.
But number one, the neighbors were never notified of the zoning change in their own neighborhood. So that falls back to the ward councilor. I don't know if he's asleep at the switch or what he's doing, but when you have a project of this scale, not to notify them of a zoning change, whether that was R2, R4, whatever it was, is just, I don't know if it's done on purpose or it's incompetence. So it's either one of the two. Then they have the meeting, and then you come back, they drop it at the last meeting of the year, and the city council president Turco tries to stifle a councilor from speaking.
Right.
And I don't know if he doesn't know Robert's rules at all, but when there's a motion on the floor, anybody can speak on a motion because you don't like what they have to say. You can't cut them off. You can't, the motion was to approve and set up a public hearing special permit for August. You can't get into whether it's 100 units, it's 50. You can't get into the details. What you can do is question the legality of the receiving and set up a public hearing. Because if I was there, I would have said, well, wait a minute. What basis are you applying for this permit? Non-conforming use, a cluster development? I don't think any of those apply. So I would even say, I would have made a motion to send it to legal affairs to get a legal opinion that it shouldn't even be properly in front of us. And she has every right to say what she wanted to say, and he blatantly cut her off.
See, that's,
and you could see it on TV. You could see his face, the scowl on his face.
Let me just interrupt for 1 second, just to reinforce it for people, and you can go back. And you highlighted the failure of the politicos in the city to inform the residents of Ward 4 up in the J.B. Thomas area about the zoning change.
Correct.
They wanted to do a zoning change. That's the number one. That's totally top of the list. Close second is it's outrageous in a democratic government, representative government. We're a republic. We're not really a true democracy. We elect people to represent us. But it's one of the most outrageous examples of the system running amok is when the president of a body will not allow an elected member, okay? When the president of the city council will not allow a city councilor, an elected member by the people of the city of Peabody, to speak or to silence her, okay? That is outrageous, and it really, to be quite honest, it's grounds, I think, to take a look at what's going on down there at City Hall. And I'm surprised. I'm not surprised at some councilors, but I'm surprised there's a couple of other ones that should have stood up and said, "Wait a minute, Mr. President, she has a right to speak. She's a member of this body." And, but they didn't either. So, I mean, I'm just disappointed in several councilors that didn't do that.
The only motion that's non-debatable on the city council floor is a motion to reconsider.
To reconsider, that's
And
right.
so you have every right to speak on it. And whether, when I was on the council, my thing was let people have their say, whether I agree with it or I don't agree with it, but that's the democratic way, and that's our form of government. So it goes on to say that Councilor Manning asked, she didn't make a motion, she asked the councilor, Jarvis, to extend this so we can get more information and let the neighbors know. And he implied, and I watched it on TV, and he got all, you know, oh, I can't believe you're pulling this on me now. And I'm like, my jaw almost hit the ground, because this permit doesn't happen in one day. They were working on this for 3 weeks. So for him to, he knew about it 3 weeks ago, I would guess. And for him to say, you're dropping this on me now, why didn't he tell the residents of that neighborhood that this was coming? I just don't understand. And the parting shot is, you know, when she talks about democracy, our quality of life, right to protect our property, those are all those are real things. You know, when you destroy, you know, do you want a it looks like by the picture we saw, it's at least 4 stories, 35, 40 feet high, towering over your house.
Yeah.
But the last sentence is, this might not affect you personally, you live on the other side of the city, but there will be one coming to your, remember you'll be coming to your theater soon. And this has all been created by the development vision of this city to drop apartments everywhere, whether some are warranted, in my opinion, some are not. And, you know, and this segues into the El Fine fiasco over there. The property's been kicked down, can's been kicked down the road for 2.5 years when I was on the council.
Down the road again, yeah.
And it was supposed to be cleaned up, and the city attorney, I asked all these questions, and we got blah, blah. So now the ward councilor, Turco, doesn't want housing there. Okay, I can respect that. Maybe the neighbors don't want housing there. But then, is he going to vote no against this? They don't want an apartment building in their ward. They can certainly have single family and 2-family. I hope he's going to vote no against this, because there's got to be some fairness and equity in the way you're thinking. Then another one was Pulaski Street. Now, the El Fine building is an old mill building. So somebody created a zoning called the Mill Overlay District, and on Pulaski Street they had this dilapidated old building, and they switched it over to mixed-use retail along with the businesses, and I thought it was great. It's brought the property back to life. But then the Councilor Turco is pushing for apartments upstairs. So how can you say you want apartments in somebody else's ward? Well, Councilor Matsoulis was against it. And then, but you don't want the apartments in your ward, but you're going to support a condominium project in JB Thomas. I don't understand what's going on and what the thought process is.
It's a little NIMBYism, is it? You know, I think.
Well, as long as the condos are, the apartments are towering over your house, I don't care.
Yeah.
Is that? Doesn't affect me, but then you stand up and say, I don't want housing, the neighbors don't want housing. Maybe they don't want housing like that on JB Thomas property. So there's something, there's a disconnect here, and I don't know where it's coming from.
Well, there is a disconnect, and the thing is that you know, the neighbors at meetings will tell our elected officials what they want. But how many times do you have to tell our elected officials, why aren't they listening? It's almost like they're turning off the listening, and they all have hearing aids that they're turning them off, they can't hear. And we know it's all about money, obviously. Everything's about money these days. But, you know, quality of life is about money for the residents of the city. You know, when your neighborhood is wrought with traffic and congestion and density and everything else. So, you know, there are two sides. It's not just the city's desire for more income. That's got to be balanced out with you know, properly locating development so that they don't degrade the quality and integrity of neighborhoods.
Yeah. You know, the one thing about this letter, most of us want to live our lives and be left alone. We work our jobs, we come home, We want to spend time with our family. We want to relax, go home for some. For somebody to sit down and pen this letter, that's a well-written, well thought out. This person took a few hours of their time. They're so angry that they sat down and wanted to pen that letter. And there's so many unanswered questions about this development, and one access up to King Street, one out. And the main thing is this. They couldn't change the zoning. They couldn't get non-conforming use. Now they're coming in, I believe, under cluster development. Cluster development, you bring housing together, but it's focused around open space and recreational space. So unless the kids are going to play seesaw on an asphalt parking lot in the middle with their tandem parking is one here and one here behind you. So there's not enough parking. They're going to be all over King Street. So I just don't understand.
Well, you know, I mean, it's funny when politicians, elected officials get caught at when all of a sudden they come up with new. First it was DDD, and now you got there's cluster developments. There's you know, these zones. It's MOD. It's like the Mod Squad. Was it Mill Overlay District, Overlay Districts, Residential Overlay District? Enough already. Enough. I mean, come on. I mean, the thing is. You know, now they want to do senior, over 55 senior.
And that means nothing.
So if it's a cluster development, what are they going to do? Play swings in the front yard? I mean,
Dick.
I have no idea. But the thing is, it's outrageous. I mean, and you know, when people just tell you, and you know, I hear that the meeting, we both weren't there, and we shouldn't have been. We were, you know, we don't, but even the meeting in the mayor's office was a little, you know, tense at times because people were pretty steamed about it, and he took a little heat, and somebody else took a little heat, and whatnot. But you know, as they say in business, you know, the customer's always right, okay? And politics, you know, the constituent is always right, believe it or not. And you know, you don't try to show your constituents up by how smart you are and that you're more powerful than they are. You don't stand over your constituents. That's not a good thing to do. And you'll learn that, those people who do that, you'll learn that the hard way, like a lot of politicians do. But the thing is that, you know, constituents still go to the polls and vote you in. They can go to the polls and vote you out. And once you learn that lesson, and it should be a lesson well learned, then you'll be a little bit more, let's just say, a little bit more under control when you're speaking to constituents, because they have a big investment, you know. They live up in that neighborhood. Oh, yeah. They have homes that are a big part of their whole expense in life. And they have a big investment, and they want to protect that investment, and they have a right to protect that investment. And politicians who don't understand that, probably they need to get a different job, I think.
So I guess this is the question. I'm watching the meeting, and Ann Manning went right towards the head of community development, Ms. Kurt Bellavance, and asked him what he thought about how many stories. And he openly said he'd love to see 7-story buildings. So who is this his vision? Because whose vision is he representing?
He's speaking for the city. He's the community development director for the city. You know, you've been in the game,
yep.
Okay? You know, the community development director cannot go out in public and make statements that aren't consistent with policy from City Hall, because the buck always stops in the mayor's office, okay? So the thing is, and this is, I'm glad you brought that up, because I completely forgot about that. One of the things that people don't want in this city, and there are very few people I've ever run into in the 25 plus years I've been on TV, and all the people I've met over the years, I don't think I've ever met, other than a developer and a lawyer who represents developers, I have never met anybody that was really interested in density, putting more people in, you know. And so this community development director is speaking, you know, for the administration. There's no question about that. And it's all a concern about the affordable housing percentages. The city hasn't met its 10% affordable housing. And they want to do that because that's what the state mandate is and all that kind of stuff. And they're worried about, councilors are worried about developers, not their financial, I don't know why they're so worried about the financial health of developers, but they are. They're not going to come and develop here. Well, good, don't let them come. Who cares? That's the way I see it. Who cares?
Yeah.
But the thing is, the community development director basically said, you know, I'm not concerned about height of buildings, you know. If that's the way you get density, that's the way you get density. You go up, you know, basically that's what he was saying. He didn't say it in those exact words, but you're not going to meet that affordable housing rate of 10% without density is basically what he's saying.
Dick, they're never going to reach it. The more they add, it's like the dog chasing its tail. They're never going to it's never going to happen. That's my take. I've heard this for 10 to 12 years, you know, my time on the council, and I believe there's been, as far as I know, there's been no 40Bs built here. Now this one, maybe on Oak Street, that I'm hearing that might be coming because, you know, the council played hardball with them because they wanted to build 24 units. And then they got pissed off, and I think they filed for 60 units of a 40B. So I don't know, you know, what the plan is or what the vision. But so is he saying that he'd like to see 7 stories on J.B. Thomas?
Well, I think he's saying in order for the city to meet its 10% mandate from the state for affordable housing, that the only way to reach that particular percentage is to have density.
Yeah.
And
so the question is, what, we're going to put it on his street?
Well,
let's put it on his street, and we'll see what the density goes.
Go up to Russell Street. Put it on Russell Street, or Stone Drive up in Ward 6, or Catherine Drive up in York Street, Mary Rose Way in Ward 5. You know, I mean, put it on America Drive up in Ward 6. I mean, what the heck? I mean. Would you be unhappy if they did that up there? I think you would be. And so, but the rest of it, and you know, the interesting thing is, you know, some of these councilors really don't have historical perspective on how the city developed and all that. Not that it's relevant all the time, but it makes sense of how things develop. And you know, I still talk with some people in government that don't know that like 1 in 5 people in Peabody, 20% of the people who live in Peabody live in the East End, where I live. The areas next to Salem and Danvers. West Peabody, East Peabody, okay? And it's the East End, okay? And that's Ward 3, Councilor Matoulis' ward. And, you know, but yet, those are the areas where there's a lot of higher buildings in Ward 3.
Yep.
Okay, and on the fringe of Ward 4, some of the other buildings as well. But the thing is, naturally, that's where these buildings are usually located, and but not in low-level areas in housing like in South Peabody, in Middle Peabody. Other than, you know, you got the high school.
But what's happening, Dick, in some ways, the city is shooting itself in its own foot. Because a lot of these issues that are happening, they created. They created the J.B. Thomas by letting this foreign company who doesn't care anything about Peabody except making a buck, they're overseas, come in and instead of say, no, that's not the vision for our neighborhoods. We're not going to allow 150 condos, because that's how it started out, in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
Let me, before you go on, Barry, let me just give the number again. 978-977-0570. Anybody want to call in on this, please do. Love to hear from you. So, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
So some of these things have been brought on by themselves, just like the one with that convoluted hotel, apartment building, function facility, bar. So in that one, they changed the residential overlay district at the North Shore Mall, because the mall may want housing someday. I get that. That makes sense. So they say we're going to limit them to 5 stories. So the hotel is 6 stories high. It's like, what are you? But I don't know if it's driven by attorneys and developers wanting what they want. And so here's a classic example: 26 Howley Street. You know, that was, I spent a lot of time in that building, and it's a sick building. I don't care
Walnut,
what.
the
Yeah,
Walnut
right on the
House,
corner near
yeah.
Stop and Shop.
Yeah.
And it was a sick building. I don't care what the attorney says. I'll debate him when that comes to the council. We'll debate that. So there's not much they can do with that building, and he wants to put apartments in there, right? So it's one thing to put apartments, right? My take is it wouldn't be actually a bad location for apartments. Tear it down, just like Pulaski Street, not Pulaski, Fine property. Tear it down and build it. They want to build 2 more stories on top of the 3 or 4 story building there, and cluster people into a sick building. And it doesn't. If you tore it down and rebuilt it, but once again, it's about money. It's all this is about money and greed. And look, I understand people making money, but not at the expense of our community and everybody around it. And look at one other. Oh, so we got a call?
I don't know. Do we have a call? I can't see.
Yeah, we have a call.
We do. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good,
Good.
thanks.
Thanks for the call.
And I also live in East Peabody. But I'm calling because we're talking about all this building that's going on in the city. And is this why now there's a rodent problem in, I guess it's more in South Peabody than any other part? I'm not quite sure, but I read about it in the paper, and now they're looking at the way we take care of our trash. So is this the cause?
It came up a few months back, and it was in South Peabody that you're talking about, and
Yeah.
And there, it's a persistent problem, I guess, but it's been flying under the radar, and don't know the cause of it, and usually development. I worked in the Big Dig in the '90s and whatnot, and I can tell you. It unearthed huge, the city was loaded with rodents. I mean, we had a special department that just did that. That's how bad it got. So development does do that. Mm-hmm. Development does do that.
Yeah, where in Ward 1 are they seeing the biggest influx of rats? Is there a certain area?
I saw it in the paper. I know she
Because you have that Bartholomew, he destroyed that whole side and put in
the mountain, the other side of the cliff.
So wherever there's building and water, you're going to see an influx of rats. So those rats have to go somewhere. So I don't know what's part of Ward.
I haven't heard much about it though. The other, you bring it up again, but I distinctly remember reading an article about that, and they were trying to, make sure everybody understood it's just a seasonal thing or whatever, changes in the season, the weather, and all that. They didn't seem to want to make a big deal out of it, but it's obviously ongoing.
Yes, and I know the article in the Salem News was talking about possibly mandating those, I guess they call them totes,
Yes.
those receptacles.
The barrels, yeah, the barrels.
Yeah, that Salem, I know Salem has them.
Those are the tall ones with the lock on them.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that what people are finding, that when they come out in the morning, their garbage is shredded because they think that there's rats and all that? Is that what they're seeing? Is it a trash issue, or is it a development issue and I don't know if it's widespread all over Ward 1. I'm not sure.
I don't either, but rodents are rodents. I mean, you see them. It's not you don't see papers, you see them. I mean, there was an outbreak.
If you're seeing rats, that's pretty serious.
Ugh.
That's serious
But
stuff.
we don't, what the cause, I can tell you construction does it, but so doesn't poor habits by people,
Okay.
leaving food. I mean, who knows how or why they're there. I wouldn't go so far as to blame it on just one thing. I think it's, as I found out from my years in the Big Dig, a lot of it, at least 50% of it, is the failure of people to cover up their trash and they leave them. They take bags and they throw them still open. They don't tie them. It's poor habits on our part too. So I wouldn't blame it solely on construction.
Have you heard of anything in the downtown with rats, or is it just Ward 1?
In the paper, it sounded like it was South Peabody.
Yeah.
I know where I am. I haven't seen anything or heard of any issue.
No, I think it's South Peabody too. That's the last time I heard, and that was months ago. But
Okay.
it's been under the radar since. I don't know if it's still a problem. And if anybody out there lives in Ward 1 and wants to comment on the caller's question, you know, give us a call, 977-0570. But
Okay.
thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, good night.
Take
Good
care. Yeah, and that was only like a couple of days story or something like that. I didn't see much of it. I can't see in there when I see the hands moving, but I don't know if there's anybody. We have a call?
Yep,
Okay.
we have another call.
Caller, you're on.
I can hear you on the TV. Oh, there you are on my phone. Okay. Let me just turn the TV down. Okay. Yes, I live on Ellsworth Road, and one of J.B. Thomas is affecting me. But two, I'll cover that one first. We definitely have a rat problem in the neighborhood, which we did not. I've lived here for 13 years, and I know I've had conversations with all of my neighbors. We're vigilant about our trash. I haven't filled a bird feeder since March, yet they're still out there. I've one neighbor who set out some traps last week, and in 48 hours caught 5 rats.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is all new to me.
Ma'am, when did this start? Was it this last 6 months? Was it a year ago? Was it 2 years ago?
When the middle school...
Yeah, I was just going to say it,
Yep.
the middle school.
So when the middle school was under construction, I saw 2 in my yard. So
Yeah.
I stopped. I used to have bird feeders. I
Okay.
stopped and didn't do
Okay.
it for a couple of years. And then that all stopped. And then it's really been just since the hospital.
Well, I knew it. It's when you get development, they were blasting.
Yes, and that I
Turn off the the TV. Okay.
So, okay, yep.
Turn your TV off.
Yeah, we're getting some feedback on it. Okay.
Let me put that on mute. There we go. So with the middle school, we anticipated it.
Did
But-
the city kind of let you know that was going to happen?
No, they didn't do any mitigation.
Okay.
And are you still getting feedback? I have my TV on mute, but it seems like it's a feedback. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
We can hear you
Anyway,
fine.
So, yes, with the middle school, I sort of anticipated just from living in other areas. I knew that could happen. But the city, if they did any type of mitigation, they didn't inform any of us.
Okay.
And then again now, and I'm on various Facebook websites, many people in the area seem to be having issues with things.
Okay.
But yeah, seeing 5 large rats in my backyard was pretty disturbing.
Yeah, that's scary.
And again, I have nothing. In March, I put some bird seed out, put a little bit on the ground for the doves, saw a rat and said, okay, I'm not feeding the birds anymore.
Okay.
So that is a concern. I was oddly pleased when it made it into the Peabody News, or the Salem News.
When did you see it? When did you see it in the news?
It was this past week. It was front page of the news.
Okay.
I don't know what day. I think it was this past week or the week prior, but that
I must have
it
missed it.
relieved
So-
me a bit in that people will have conversations now about it.
But so you live in Ward 4. The other caller was from Ward 1.
Yeah.
So this isn't an isolated incident. It's just a
No.
coincidence that they built on Bartholomew and they destroyed that whole area and all those homes. Now the
No,
Higgins.
no. And I'm at the Emerson Park end of Ellsworth, so I guess we could say quite a bit away from the hospital.
Right,
I do
right.
think that's adding to things.
Yep.
Well, I would think that if they when they tear down J.B. Thomas, you're going to have some more grief.
I would imagine so.
Yeah. What's your take, ma'am, about? Has there been any communication from the councilor to you
No.
about the project? No.
No, and unfortunately, I saw a lot of negative things posted. So I reached out to him directly in regard to, because of the work, the construction work on Lowell Street. Ellsworth is the obvious cut through for a lot of people. So it was a few months back I had reached out to him via email of, could we get some more police presence on Ellsworth to slow down the traffic? And I really hoped for a response, just so I could think that all the people who posted negative things.
Please tell me he responded.
He did not. I was very bothered because I've been to council meetings. I've been to many meetings at Higgins regarding the dog park, and my conversations with the individual have always been wonderful. So yeah, I was bothered by that because it's not as though my name had a history with him.
What's your take, since we got you on the phone? We like to hear from people that were, residents of the areas we're talking about, trying to help and all that stuff. So, what's your take on the this new project that they're going to be constructing on the J.B. Thomas? So, what's the feeling of your neighbors about that project?
The neighbors who are at this end of Ellsworth Road, honestly, I wish that the city had known that it was up for sale, and in an ideal world, I wish the city had purchased it and built an assisted living facility there. It would be perfect for our neighborhood. We would have all been comfortable with that. It wouldn't have had the traffic, but that's no longer an option. I've looked into the developer, which I know there's talk of, it's a developer from China, et cetera, but the actual, I don't know the proper term for him, but the head of it, so to speak.
CEO, yeah.
I guess it would be CEO, but I think it was a different title. He recently purchased a new property in Weston for $16 or $17 million, and I can send you the link at some point if you want the confirmation. But he has a one-family home on 18.5 acres of property. They're looking to put now 110 homes on about 3-something acres of property.
What if we tried
So
that
much
in
for-
Weston? Well, that would be great if we did it in Weston and put it right next to his house.
That is where he is.
So much for
Yeah.
density, huh? One house.
So obviously, and I can understand he's a business person.
Yeah, of course.
He doesn't care about Peabody. He's in it to make some money, and he
Yep.
bought a piece of property for not a whole lot of money. It was 1.1 or 1.2 million, so it's fine for him. But no, 110. I don't think we have much control over.
Are you going to be at the August 22nd?
I will be there.
Good.
As will many of the neighbors from Ellsworth Road.
I have a question.
Did you go to the? Excuse me,
No,
I
go
just
ahead.
want. Did you go to the meeting at the mayor's office?
I was in that meeting.
You were.
Yes, and some of what's been put forth, I feel, is a misinterpretation of the moment and the time.
Okay, yeah. So we had no corroboration.
Yes,
of what happened.
I was there, and I felt the mayor was very appropriate. He had mentioned prior to the actual city meeting beginning that, I won't get into his personal life details, but he had a personal family
Okay.
important commitment that he needed to attend to.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people apparently did not hear that and chose to keep him there for a very long time. And I appreciate that he stayed for his city and listened to people's complaints and vents and all of that.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
My question to you is: have you heard, and I've heard, that this developer has been reaching out to abutters trying to buy up more people's homes to put in a bigger parking lot?
I can only say that as hearsay. There are some Facebook pages that state that they have heard that people have said that.
But there's no proof of that? Okay.
Well, I don't know anyone who lives on Southwick Road. I know there's one man who attends all of the meetings, but I don't know him personally.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks for your
Caller, thanks a lot.
Thanks for
Caller.
your insight.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm glad I got through. I couldn't in past weeks.
Thanks for being. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
We have another one.
Do we have another call? Okay. Caller, you're on. Caller?
Hello?
Yes, you're on,
you're on.
caller.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to point out, I'm seeing a pattern here at this point of, non-responsiveness from our elected officials. And the elections are right around the corner, whether it's J.B. Thomas or the cell phone tower. It's just been a fight everywhere across the city, even with the rat problem, to get anyone to respond to these residents. And myself included, I'm disappointed. I think a lot of people are disappointed, and I hope people remember that when they have a choice between who's in there now and who's coming up to run for the first time. I think we need a change. Even with the election around the corner, I would hope that some of these incumbents would even make an effort to respond to their constituents, but they're not.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's disappointing to hear.
Well, I hear it all the
I see
time.
a pattern is my point, and I hope that people remember that when they get in the ballot box.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
That's why I
Appreciate
think
that.
change is
Appreciate
good.
that call.
Change is good.
Well, people may think that, when I make a statement like I hear it all the time, they may say, yeah, you're right. But you know something? This caller substantiates what she thinks and believes. And be honest with you, in a few more years, in another 6 months maybe, you're going to be getting as many feedbacks as I get all the time. And the thing is, and maybe I'm just in the right place at the right time. You're working all the time and playing around all the time. So, but the thing is, I do hear a lot of that, and I think I mentioned something on this program a while back that. Be prepared, it's coming, and what's coming is people getting their back up and their dander up. And that letter that we read, this letter here, okay, and is an indication that something is coming. People are getting a little fed up about not being informed of what's going on, what their public officials are doing, supposedly doing their business, and it's really, it's a situation where they want to know what you're doing. I mean, after all, they elected you. You're getting a pension, when you retire, and you're getting paid to do the job. What are you doing for us? And they don't. I think a lot of people in this city, as I said in my opening remarks, it's not hunky-dory here as some of these elected officials think. It is not, and people are fed up.
Well, it's really about accountability.
It is accountability. That's right.
And if once again, if people aren't running, you get a sense of arrogance. And you always got to remember that, when I was in office, you're only as good as your last vote, right? You could be the best counselor, then you make.
What have you done for me lately?
So
Yeah,
the
that's
people
right.
don't owe you anything.
Yep.
If you always remember that and do what's right for the community, and be responsive and try to help and be a good listener, like this letter, if you really, that person is very upset, very irate. I mean, by the tone of that,
Yep.
Transparency, accountability, chicanery,
Shenanigans.
So, and look, in that the comment one of the callers made about, and in terms of the mayor, he's always been respectful and cordial to people. So. I don't, those rumors about him having exchanges, and some people you can only push so far before they fire back. But
Sure.
You may disagree on, his vision to put 110 apartments there, the mayor's vision, but he's always respectful about it. You don't have to agree with his plan, but as long as there's give and take back and forth and there's fair debate and people listen, if the council's not going to listen. But one of the points was I brought up before, what's good in Ward 1, where there's no apartments at the L. Fine building, should be the same thing as the Pulaski Street, the same at J.B. Thomas, within the zoning. If they're going to keep, we're going to keep the L. Fine building. It's IL, light industrial. We're going to keep it there. So why aren't we keeping 1 and 2 family? We're going to come up with some cluster development to make it work with tandem parking. I'm making a wisecrack about tandem parking. They don't have enough parking, so they're going to park people in back of each other. That's what tandem parking is.
Yep.
And
so obviously there's going to be cars that spill over into the street.
Oh, they'll be all over it. Wait till the winter.
And
when the snow
this thing,
comes.
this egress, and I'm sorry. We got a call?
We got a call.
Okay. Sorry to keep you holding, caller. I didn't see them waving at me, so I can see them now.
Not at all. I enjoyed the music. I just want to really echo the same concerns by some of the previous callers. Most importantly, it may be at J.B. Thomas this time, but in another 6 months it could be in my neighborhood or it could be in someone else's neighborhood.
Of course.
So I personally think that the neighbors, put this way, the residents of the city, we need to band together. I'd love to see 500 people show up at that meeting about the J.B. Thomas thing. I've always said this is like if you're an elected official in this city, it's the greatest city in the world because we just as residents don't band together and show up and really show our opinion on some of these things. I'm convinced that something like this, if this were Salem, there would have been 250 people there, vehemently opposed to it.
Bingo. You got
Yeah,
it.
I
You're
agree with
exactly
you,
right.
and I think, you know, every effort, you know, that people make to get people to the polls and vote and hold our elected officials accountable, go to community meetings like the one on in August. What is it? The 22nd, is it? What's the date of that meeting?
I don't know what the
August 2nd,
22nd, I believe.
22nd, is it?
August
Yeah,
22nd.
You know, for the J.B. Thomas. And the thing is that, but you know, you're right, Caller. You can win that battle, but is the war won? If our elected officials do not listen,
Right.
do not listen. It says right here in this letter, okay, that the people of Ward 4 have spoken. They want what the zoning calls for, which is R2, which is single and two-family.
They spoke in Ward 1 too, right? That's-
So, I mean, and so it can't be any plainer on there. I mean, how much more do they want to, what part of that didn't they understand?
You're right. You're right.
And this is what aggravates me. And you can tell there's an air of, you know, a lack of respect for the public. Arrogance is. I didn't want to use the word arrogance, but
I did.
But and you did a great job. But the thing is that when you have the city council president trying to stifle a member of the council, elected member of the council, because she wanted to speak on it, and then you have a situation where the ward councilor in Ward 4 knows what the people want and still does not respond in a way that's, you know, the way that they think that he should. And if you have a ward councilor who, there's actually a couple of them, it's not just one ward council, there's two or three of them that love, you know, housing in other wards other than their own.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, you may be a Ward 6 council, Ward 4 council, or Ward 2 council, doesn't matter. You still serve the people of the city. You're still a city councilor.
Right.
Okay? So that means you're supposed to do the right thing for the whole city, correct?
You're right. You're right. So I'll jump off. I'm sure there's some other calls, but once again, we're all vulnerable here. I mean, so just because it's not my neighborhood, you know something, there's properties around me that could be on the hit list next. If you don't put a stop to this, you know.
Yeah, and just because we're critical of some of these, or residents are critical, doesn't mean we don't love our city. And we want to see the best for our city. Just because we don't want to see the quality of life go down the toilet and traffic and gridlock and just all the things that go with high density housing. Just because we criticize it doesn't mean we don't. I've lived here my whole life. I want to see the best it can be, the best schools, the best quality of life. So if they look at us with disdain, that's their problem. If they can't accept it, that's tough.
You're right. Gentlemen, thank you. Great show as always.
Thanks
All
a
right,
lot,
have a
caller.
good night.
Appreciate
Take
it.
care. Bye.
Let me just make a comment. What the caller brought up, and what you just said was, I want to comment on that. You remember when they used to call Rico Mello, Councilor Melno, and they used to, I'm saying that the administrations in the past would criticize anybody in the city that was against overdevelopment, intrusive development into neighborhoods and whatnot, and they'd be saying, oh, and then they had a you know, a real champion standing behind them, a writer who's, I'm not talking bad about him, he's passed away, but a writer for the Salem News who used to be right there with him, you know, Melno, you know, and you know, all these anti-progressive people and all that kind of stuff. Well, you know, as we've said on this show before, more isn't always better. Bigger isn't always better. And that message is getting out, but currently our elected officials seem to not be heeding it. So anyway, caller, you're on.
Hello.
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 I'm calling about the King Street project,
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes, sir.
and I'm wondering who the city council or the Ward 4 councilor or the president of the council board, who they represent. I'm a little confused. Do they represent the Chinese developer, or do they represent the people that elected them in office? And if so, I would think that the citizens of Peabody at the next election, to quote Donald Trump, clean the swamp. Get rid of them. okay, and put somebody else in there, some new faces in there that are going to be accountable to the residents of this city.
You know, can I just respond?
No, go
so
ahead.
the thing is, my take is this. If the ward councilor is really in favor of it, why does he say nothing for 3 months and waits for the special permit to be dropped? He should be out there talking to you, having meetings. This is what I think is good for the neighborhood. Then the neighbors can say, no way, we don't want it. That you're having a dialogue. But to shut your mouth and then drop it the last meeting, that I understand where you're coming from is, who does he represent? Because he's not representing, if the neighbors are all speaking out against it. And is there anybody in your neighborhood that's jumping up and down to have this?
No.
No one's come out and said, I want this, this is the best thing for your neighborhood, except for the ward council.
Exactly. That's why I think he represents the Chinese developer.
Well, he certainly is not representing the views of the residents in the area, the neighborhood up there, and the outrageousness of not keeping neighbors informed is further evidence that they're trying to skirt the feelings of the neighborhood, which isn't the right thing to do politically. And hopefully, maybe this election there'll be some changes made. Who knows? We certainly hope that people will hold our elected officials accountable for their votes and the way they think and the way they've been treated. It's only right that they do that, and hopefully that'll happen.
I'm surprised too that the councilors, in regard to Councilor at-large Manning, that the other councilors didn't come to her defense when they tried to stifle her.
Can I respond?
Yo,
Let me
absolutely.
respond.
Yeah,
I was there for 10 years. I was on an island. And no one came to my defense when I was fighting a lot of these developments. I just got, steamrolled. And I feel bad for Councilor Manning, because some of these councilors know that what's happening is wrong. And when you remain silent, that tells me something. That tells me something. I'll tell you a quick
Go ahead.
I'll tell you a quick story. The mayor appointed me to the licensing board after 10 years of service on the council. And I got up there and I thanked the council for the appointment. Not one person, except Councilor Manning, could wish me luck and say, "We'll know you do a great job, Barry. Good luck." No, they all sat there with their thumbs up their rear ends. No one could say one nice thing. And I just was like, wow. And then somebody else comes up, and then, they gave him the back slap. So, that bothered me, because that's not what it's about, And
Caller, thank you.
Thank you for calling. But anyway, I'm pontificating.
No, actually, it leads into our final minute here. We need people in office who are courageous. Okay, if you have people sitting around the council chamber and are scared to death to say anything or do anything, they don't belong there. And the perpetrators of that fear need to be found out who they are, and they should be drummed out too. And the thing is, if you're not courageous on our behalf, step aside, please. Okay? Just step aside.
I don't want you in the same foxhole if you're not going to stand up. I'd hate to be in a foxhole with you.
You just have to give me an extra gun so I can keep one on you.
One on you and one on the enemy.
But the thing is, and that's a good point, that you bring up about no one standing up. That's even more outrageous than I even imagined. But that's cowardice and that's lack of courage. And that's really what it is.
Well said.
And so anyway. We got a minute. Anything you want to, before we go, this hour went by fast.
Oh.
Thank you for the calls, by the way, everyone.
Yeah, I think that we'll probably get this into future shows, but there's a slate of some candidates running. Let everybody look into them, find out, ask them questions.
The lights are dimming. But
all right,
we will take time on the next show to do that. Thanks a lot for calling, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Great show.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks when we ask you to make the call. Thanks.